When you're looking for a new wax for your candle business, you need to weigh out a lot of different factors. You need a good cold throw in order to sell the candle, and you need a good hot throw to keep your customer coming back. Melt point for shipping purposes, jar adhesion, you want the candle to basically not pull away from your jar so much, especially if you're using more clear types of jars where your customers are going to be able to see through the container. You also want your candle to be relatively easy to wick and relatively easy to burn. And then there's your branding. So do you want to highlight a specific type of natural ingredient like coconut wax or soy wax? Or are you just really interested in getting the best hot throw? There's no such thing as a perfect wax. But all that aside, if you want a wax that checks most of the boxes, then this video is for you. Hello everyone, if you're new here, I'm Alan with 𝗏𝗏𝗘𝗏𝗏, and this channel is all about sharing the joy of candle making. On this channel, I share tips and tricks on how to make quality candles coming from someone with a background in chemistry. I also share the behind the scenes of my small business, 𝗏𝗏𝗘𝗏, and we just have fun. So subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Now, I'm kind of in a unique position helping a lot of other candle makers, and so I personally like to be familiar with a lot of different waxes. I regularly use more than 4 different waxes in my own candle brand, and that is not something that I would recommend to anyone who is a new candle maker for sure, and definitely not even if you're an experienced candle maker. It's just too much inventory to keep track of and too many different things that you're just trying to weigh out and balance. And as I mentioned before though, I'm also studying chemistry. I'm finishing a bachelor's degree in chemistry, and that is just a field that has always piqued my interest. So I love testing, way more so than the average. But I don't recommend having that many different waxes. However, I do recommend having at least 2 waxes that you're familiar with to a certain extent, and I'll talk more about why that is later on in the video. All right, so I'm gonna mention my personal favorite, and that is, again, weighing out all the factors that we discussed at the beginning of this video. So your hot throw, your cold throw, your jar adhesion, your ease of wicking, ease of burning, your overall aesthetics of the candle, your melt point, and also if you want to check that eco box for having a soy wax, something that can be branded as a soy wax, since the one I'm about to mention is mostly entirely soy with a minuscule amount of food grade paraffin added primarily for stability, but also for body. And that magical wax is CB2, also known as Cal Soy, or also known as Soy Bliss. 1617 used to sell it as number 7. It's sold by the manufacturer Cal Wax, and they are based in California, as you might imagine. They ship out of Arizona if you buy pallets straight from the manufacturer. But a number of our suppliers do sell this wax, and actually, fun fact, CB2 stands for Container Blend 2. And this wax is, according to Cal Wax, the company that manufactures it, their longest standing, best overall performing container wax. And for reference, they also make coconut apricot wax, the 𝗖𝗔𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗧. Now, why is that? So when you make candles with this wax, you're gonna notice really fast just how easy it is to make candles. To get started and to make, I would say, a pretty good quality candle. It's going to have above average cold throw, and I would also say above average hot throw. And it's my go-to wax for concrete candles because it simply adheres so well to the vessels. And with concrete containers, the vessels tend to be colder in general, and so the wax tends to pull more away. Even if you get the wax all the way to the edges, it oftentimes eventually will pull away from the candle as it's curing and as it's sitting on a shelf, because the vessel is just, has so much more difficulty adhering to a concrete container than it does glass. I would also say if you use clear vessels, this is a great one, because it just works really well with jar adhesion. And aesthetically, it's got this beautiful kind of opaque look to it, and it takes dye decently well, not nearly as good as a heavier paraffin wax. Those are going to give you the more bold colors, but it still does accept dye really well if you like to do that, and it just wicks really easily in general. And you're going to find that a lot of times para-soy waxes you'll have that experience with. If something is more heavy in the paraffin, it oftentimes is more challenging to wick in my experience, and sometimes even the ones that are more dense natural waxes can also be very difficult to wick, whereas something that is a fortified blend like CB2, it works really well. It's much easier in general to wick. Now, I will say you're not gonna get the hot throw in general that you would with something like 6006 or 4627 or your heavier paraffin waxes, but those are also going to be harder to wick in general, and they're also going to have more difficulty burning even when they are wicked well. It can be easier to get soot with those waxes. Now, I have talked about how it's a myth that paraffin in general creates more soot. It has to be wicked properly, but the reason that it gets that bad reputation is because a lot of candle makers don't take the time to properly know how to wick it, or to spend the time to really test which wicks would work best with it. And I'll link a couple of my videos down below, and I'll try to link one above as well, talking about the facts versus fiction on paraffin wax. And 6006 is one that I have used as well in my own candle making. Actually, I will typically try to make the candle first with 6006, and if that doesn't work, I'll often go to CB2. But I will say, if you plan on doing a lot of selling in stores, I would not recommend 6006 because it really struggles with cold throw, and that is because it's a 70-30, so that's 70% paraffin, and it is a food grade paraffin, so it's not the same thing as slack wax or scale wax, all the things that we think of when we think of paraffin wax, as in the unrefined versions. That's very different than we're talking about in 6006. It is a fully refined food grade paraffin wax, and that is the exact same stuff that they put on vegetables, for example, or that they has a lot of good skin properties, or it can, but then of course in the case of a candle, you don't want to use that on your skin because you're using way too much fragrance oil to do that. Some oils aren't even compatible with skin uses. You get the point. But yeah, that wax is not the one I would recommend if you're going to be selling in stores, because the cold throw really, really suffers. Whereas something like CB2 is going to really split the difference, where you get that excellence in terms of the cold throw because it's a primarily soy wax, but that little bit of fortification with the paraffin and the other soy-based additives that they fortify it with helps so much with the hot throw. Now, for that wax in general, I would recommend the CDN Wick series. You can get these at a number of suppliers. I know Black Tie Barn offers them, as well as Hive and Honey. I don't think Candle Science does, or Flaming Candle, or Nature's Garden, but I'll list some of the other suppliers that offer these wicks. They are my go-to cotton wick. I do also use some other wick series as well, like the HTP, and then I've dabbled with the Premier series and the CD wicks, and I've used Eco wicks in the past too. But by and large, I would say CDN, they're just so versatile with these more natural waxes. Now, I will also do a video, I'll link my video comparing CD and CDN wicks, because a lot of you guys are familiar with CD wicks because they're carried by a lot more suppliers. However, these are not the ones that I would recommend, primarily for aesthetic reasons, but also they just simply burn a bit too hot. For waxes like CB2, they're going to cause you to burn through your candle more. You might lose some of the fragrance profile, etc. Also, if you do multi-wick candles, this is an excellent wax to use because it just has an easier time burning in general. It's going to be much more, I guess what I mean by that is it's going to be much more it's gonna be much more easy on your customer. If they're not burning your candle just perfectly, like 6006 will oftentimes require, in order to avoid things like soot, or in order to avoid things like tunneling, it often will vacillate between the two quite easily, whereas something like CB2, or a lot of your coconut apricot waxes, or also I'll give an honorable mention to Pro Blend 600, although I have not had very good experience myself with this wax. A lot of people really, really like it, but again, it's going to be that type of a para-soy wax. That one's more of a 50-50, but in general, they are going to split the difference, where you're getting that hot throw from the paraffin, you're getting the cold throw from the soy, and oftentimes the synergy between those two creates a better ease in burning than your more heavy paraffins, or than your more dense and viscous natural waxes. Now, I also want to talk about why I think it's important that you have familiarity with at least 2 different waxes. I don't mean like 4 different ones, but at least 2 different ones. And ideally maybe 2 similar ones. So for example, if I like to primarily use CB2, it would be really advantageous for me to at least have some familiarity with something like Soy 10, or just another wax that predominantly is a soy with a minuscule amount of food grade paraffin. If you use pure soy, then have 2 familiarities with 2 pure soy waxes. So if you use 464, then maybe with C3, ideally a different manufacturer entirely maybe. So that way, if that manufacturer were to have supply issues like 𝗂𝗧 has currently as of fall of 2025 with Golden Wax with their 464 and a couple other ones, then you have that other wax that you can fall back on. And I would also recommend this for pretty much everything, like wicks series and even your fragrance oils. So you want to be having familiarity, I would say, with at least 2 suppliers. You don't have to get crazy, but I would not recommend ever putting your eggs all in one basket, because if there are supply chain issues, then that can really severely impact your business. Whereas if you spend a little bit of extra time developing that familiarity on the front end, you feel way more confident on the back end to be able to pivot and to not fall under with your own business. Well, anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. And if you have any other topics or any questions, please leave them down below. There's lots of other waxes if you want to do, like coconut apricot, for example. The one from Candle Science is awesome. I actually did help them. I volunteered to help in some of their testing, and I can tell you that that wax, hands down, is my favorite coconut apricot on the market. I also was basically married to 464 wax, if you watch back my videos from like 3 years ago, and that one to me just had too much batch inconsistency. But there's a lot of waxes that, you know, if you're, for example, on the West Coast and you have an easier access to Soy 10, that is a very similar wax, for example, to CB2. It is made by a different manufacturer, in that case AccuBlend versus Cal Wax manufacturer CB2, but they have a lot of similarities where there's heavily fortified soy waxes that do have a minuscule amount of food grade paraffin added for body, a little bit of body, and mainly for stability. And that also combats all those frosting properties, and you don't get sinkholes, you don't get all the sort of imperfections that soy wax, 100% soy, like the 𝗂𝗧 464, 415, even 444, you can get with those waxes. The frosting and the pitted tops after you burn, even if you're able to get the top smooth at first, you won't get that at all with these heavily fortified soy blends. Now, I will also link my video down below talking about really what causes those at a molecular level, because it's kind of interesting to learn how the crystallization and the recrystallization is actually responsible for that, the inconsistencies and how the wax recrystallizes. And I have a whole video kind of talking about a lot of different aesthetic issues that you can get with things like 464, and that they're much more prone to batch inconsistency issues than some of the other waxes that I just mentioned. Anyways, if you did enjoy this one, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and yeah, leave me a comment if you got any questions at all. But I'm sending you guys peace, love, and light, and I'm wishing all of you happy candle making. I'd like to take the time to thank my patrons for their incredible support.
Trusting your instincts, realize that knowing looks different to each. When living authentic, do more exploring, deeper than knowing just what is essential for life that is thriving. Go deep, mute out the chatter, feel it, burn off the fire, let go until there's peace to your core. Live a life you adore. Silence the noise, away from the program, removing performance, true self, all that's standing. Live free from worry, live by just being, power in finding your wholeness in now. Go deep, mute out the chatter, feel it, burn off the fire, let go until there's peace to your core. Live
authentic at all costs and never lose your spark, because that's what makes your brand uniquely you. I'm rooting for you, and I know you have what it takes to be successful and to have fun with this craft. Until next time, happy candle making.